Hello, everybody. It's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty. This is episode number 129, and it's January the 12th, No, it's not January the 12th. It is January the 19th. Should update my notes better. Anyways, it is January the 19th. I was living in the past, so sue me. Okay, lots to talk about because, yes, you probably already know we have hit over 10,000 subscribers, and we are going to do something special, and we're going to talk about what that is on today's episode. But before we get that, let's take a look at what we've been up to. So, you have seen this one before. I finished it last week. It's the one that I made up with just a whole bunch of random 5-inch charms, and I was calling it Scrappy Leaves, but that's because originally this pattern started out as looking like maple leaves, but then I rearranged them and it looks like it looks now. So I didn't think Scrappy Leaves was an appropriate title for this particular piece, so I asked you to give me some suggestions. And boy, you sure did. You gave me quite a lot of suggestions, and let me just find my notes here. And so here are the suggestions that I was given. Aurora, blossoming batiks, breaking points or cliff points, bursting stars, flaming stars, fluffing the feathers. Okay. Four-corner star explosion, grizzly paws, ice jewels, kaleidoscope, making a point, point of view, get to the point, a point in time, on point, straight to the point, breaking point, brownie points. A lot of people seem to like to focus on the points, and I can see why. Points of color, points of interest, scrappy leaf corners, spinning leaves, leaf me alone. Okay, that one is kind of funny. Splash, starburst. Starburst came up a couple of times. Star clusters, starburst again, starburst stars. Stephen's point of view, thorny kaleidoscope, kaleidoscope of thorns, triangle stars, triangle maze, dancing stars, dancing pointies, Tyrannosaurus paws. I think some people kind of saw a bear paw in this design, and it does look sort of like that. Willow peaks, falling sweet gum. Not sure how that one works. And my favorite crayons, Happy to be Scrappy, Color My World, Celebration of Color. So there was a ton here to choose from. And
you didn't pick any of
I
them.
didn't like any of them. I'm sorry, but I don't know. Nothing was really grabbing me. I mean, there was a couple that came close, like Bursting Stars or Four Corner Star Explosion or Starburst or Star Clusters. But I thought, yeah, but you've seen lots of patterns that have stars in them in the name of it because, yeah, okay, I get it. They do look sort of like stars. And the points, yeah, that's pretty obvious. So I went with something else. I kind of did focus on the stars. Now, first of all, some people say it looked like a kaleidoscope image, which, yeah, sort of does, because there's a symmetry there to it all. And so I thought, could I do something with kaleidoscope? So I thought, what about kaleidostars? Different. Take the first part of the word kaleidoscope, hyphenate it with the word stars. So that would cover a few. But then that led me to what I finally decided on. And here's what I've decided on. You may not like it, but I do. It's When Stars Collide. And that's the name of this quilt. When Stars Collide. So thanks everybody for getting my brain going, because that really did help. Although I didn't pick anybody's particular one, it got me thinking a little bit more about it. So, yeah, When Stars Collide. Now, I have written this as a pattern. This is the pattern. I have never written a pattern before. Not easy. even though this pattern is very easy, it is not an easy thing to write. But I have used other patterns as a guide, and I even have a diagram showing you the layout. I was able to do that in EQ, Electric Quilt. And I had Walter look it over, and then I sent a copy of off to my friend Stephanie, because you know Stephanie's patterns are very well written. And so Stephanie looked at it, did a little bit of editing for me on here. Actually, she didn't have to do that much. I'm really surprised because, but I went through it a lot to make sure that it's clear to anybody that's doing it. Anyways, I now have my first pattern. Will this be available? Yes, it will be. It will also be free. I will be posting this pattern as a PDF onto my Google Drive, and I will be putting out soon the link to it. So anybody that's on my channel will be able to download this and make it if they wish. However, yes, there is more. Now, I'm not putting it up yet. And the reason being is because we're going to do something special for getting over 10,000. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So I'm just going to keep you on pins and needles for a moment or two before we talk about that, because I want to show you something else that I did. You know that Shannon and Stephanie had a retreat, a virtual retreat on this past Sunday. And Walter and I were both there. And Stephanie and Shannon both designed a pattern. In the morning, we did a foundation paper piecing pattern designed by Shannon, and it was designed for those of us who have not really done much foundation paper piecing, or none at all, could learn what this is all about. And so, let me find the screen. And so here it is. This is the one that I did. And I finished it up actually during that day, because in the second half, Stephanie had a pattern, but I'd already seen the pattern in advance, so I'd kind of worked ahead on it. And I'm in the process of taking her blocks and turning them into a quilt, which I'll talk more about maybe on Stephen and Walter Live. I'm not going to say anything much about it today. I don't think I have a picture. No, I don't, of that. But I don't like paper piecing. I have decided it's too tedious for me. But I really liked how this turned out, what it looks like. I like the color choice I used. It's nice and bold and bright. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with it? So I kind of didn't want to throw it in a corner. And yes, she designed it to be like a big pillow, or you could do it as a table topper, or you could put it as a wall hanging. I didn't want any of those things, so I decided to build a quilt around it, but using traditional patchwork with this in the center. And so here it is. I haven't quilted it yet, but this is what I came up with, and I have given it a name, and I call it Shannon's Way, which is basically a play on Shannon's name, because her last name is Way. She designed the center part of this. She was the inspiration for this quilt. And so that's why I gave it her name. So this is now going to be called Shannon's Way. And I'll show it to you again once I get it quilted and everything. This is just the top. Am I going to give you a pattern for this? No, I am not. This was an improv quilt. And what I mean by that is I just made it up as I went along. So you can see my borders are a little bit different. That is all done by accident. Well, not by accident, just by throwing things up on a design wall and seeing how they'd look. But I'm not going to develop a pattern around this. Also, because the center part of this quilt is not my pattern. The center part of it is Shannon's pattern. And I believe Shannon is going to make her pattern available at some point in time as well. So stay tuned to her channel to find out about that as well. But Walter worked on these as well. So how far did
I only did one block of each. I didn't go any further because I have my quilt to finish, and I've got a few other things on the go. So
show us Shannon's block first, since we were just looking at it.
That's the one that I ended up with.
So those are Walter's colors. Now the black really makes his pop. And Walter did it the right way with the corners. I didn't. I got a little mixed up. Not that it matters much, but I think the idea was, you notice
Well, say you put like the red corner here on the same side as the block
as the
here.
block.
Yeah.
So like if you see mine up here, if you notice the points, my points are the green one is with the green block, the yellow's with the yellow block, the red is with the red block, the blue's with the blue
And
block.
I guess the original pattern is to have them opposite,
Opposite.
right? So green, sorry, I can't point here. Green here is matching this green up here. And that
And
and
they
this
go
blue,
opposite.
they go opposite, right? To that blue. Whereas Steve's got blue and blue. So
Yeah, I've
blue
got the
and
same
blue,
one on the tip.
and then green. I'm going the way I can't do this backwards. That anyway, so
Yeah, we
you
got the
get the
point.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah, so I didn't quite follow the pattern. That was an accident. But it's okay. As far as I'm concerned, it didn't make a lot of difference to what I did
No,
with it. So
I
if
mean it just doesn't go according to what Shannon
to
has
exactly
written.
how Shannon had planned it out,
That's okay.
but that's okay. And then you did Stephanie's block,
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, I did Stephanie's block, which came out like this.
and that looks very much like the same colors almost as I used on mine.
No, yours is a little bit less in a little less contrasting.
Uh-huh. But needless to say, equally, if not better, beautiful. How are your
Yeah,
points? How are your
not too
points?
bad.
Let's
They're not
see.
exact.
Uh,
They're not too bad.
they're okay. Damn. Yeah, fine.
Considering I was in a rush when I was doing it, and I wasn't really too much. I wasn't being too careful, so
Okay. Whatever. So we did it. So, anyways, it was a fun day. We learned stuff as well, and I'm sure that Stephanie and Shannon will have another virtual retreat in the future as well. I think overall people enjoyed it and learned quite a bit from it. So it was good. Okay, so
some learned they liked paper piecing, and
yes, and
some learned
others
that they
learned it,
didn't.
or for me, it just I had done paper piecing
I
before, but
haven't. That's the first time I did paper piecing, and I haven't made up my mind whether I liked it or not.
it's not so much that I absolutely hate it. It has its place as far as I'm concerned. There are some blocks you might want to put into a quilt where, paper piecing is the way to go because you can avoid Y seams. There's angles are really weird, things like that, and only paper piecing can handle it. So yeah, it's a technique. But to do a whole quilt that's paper pieced, like one of those legit kit things or whatever, no. I find it tedious and it gives me a headache. My brain doesn't work very well with geometric shapes and flipping papers the opposite
Well, I
way.
had
And
a little bit of problem when I first started doing it because I didn't quite understand the concept of how to do it, and I made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes getting just the first piece done because I kept misinterpreting how to lay the fabrics on them.
well, it is very confusing. Shannon did a good job though of teaching it. So yeah. But
I just had Shannon was good at teaching it. My brain wasn't working on how that
no,
worked.
you have to almost
And
retrain
then
your
and then I
brain.
ran into the problems where I didn't my bottom piece wasn't the second piece wasn't as big as the pattern. So then I got it together and I realized, oh, it's not big enough. And
Well, that's why we learn how to do these things on small first and
yeah.
then work your way up to it. But for me, no, I don't really enjoy it. It's too intense for me. I mean, maybe if I did a lot, it would be different.
Yeah,
But
actually that actually I wasn't really particularly interested in legit kits
no.
based on I'm not real keen on doing like a wall hanging of a frog or
Yeah.
something like that. And so this was a good entry into how the paper piecing worked for me.
Yeah.
And if I see something down the road that it might appeal to me that is paper pieced, I might give it a go. But
Yeah.
so far, legit kits, I think I'd get very frustrated and it'd never get done.
Yeah, well, I think I have a kit for doing a Lone Star that's paper
Yeah.
pieced, that's got the lines already on it and everything. And I've had it since I started quilting and I've never done it.
Hmm.
I should pull that out and take a look at it again and
Hmm.
see, but I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever do it. We'll see, because I've made a Lone Star since then in the more traditional way. Okay, let's move on to announcements, shall we, before we get to the main event today. And first announcement is the standard one, Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen, Wednesdays, 9 a.m. Eastern Time till 4 in the afternoon. All are welcome. Link is in the show notes. And just one thing about links, people. Sometimes I will have, like right now, there will be two links, two Zoom links. One is for Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen, and the other one is for the pop-up sew day. That's coming up tomorrow at the time of recording this, which makes it January the 20th, 2024. It's Saturday morning. Now, be careful when you make sure you click on the right link, because I've had some people will send me an email. Like we had one person this past week on Stephanie and Stephen sewing said, I've been sitting in the waiting room, but no one's letting me in. Well, I know they had the wrong link, because it'll come up on my screen as the host. I know when people are trying to get in. If they've clicked the link too early, it'll come up and notify me that someone was trying to get into the Zoom thing. I see that a lot, actually. And I could see that what they had clicked was the one for the pop-up sew day, which is Saturday. So I wrote to them quickly and said, wrong one, here's the right one. Click on that. It isn't that difficult. I know it can be confusing when you go into the show notes because there's a lot of information there, but just focus on the Zoom link and read the title. It tells you what it's for and when it happens. Okay. And then the code that you click on
Yeah, it
to
seems
get it.
like people seem to be confused that um, a Zoom link is a Zoom link,
Yeah.
but you have Zoom links for specific
Yeah. Well, you have to.
purposes. Yeah,
You just don't have a Zoom link that just
generic
takes you
Zoom
to
link.
everything,
Yeah.
or you'd be in everybody's stuff all the time. So just watch for that. Just read it carefully and it'll get you in there. So, having said that, I already mentioned Pop-Up Sew Day. Pop-Up Sew Day tomorrow, Saturday, January the 20th, starting at 8 a.m. You come and go as you please. You don't have to be there at 8 a.m. Most of you know the drill for all of this. Link is there. I sent out 2 emails this week, one on Monday, one yesterday, with the link to those of you that are on my mailing list. So you have that as well. Work on whatever you want to work on. Do whatever you want to do. Eat if you want to. Some of you will know why I made that reference. And come and have a good time, because that's what it's all about. No, Walter will not be there. So Walter's fan club, I can hear the collective sigh now. Oh, Mr. Dreamy won't be there. Why? Why, Walter?
I'm going to my sew day from my group that I sometimes go to.
He doesn't like us.
No, I like you. In fact, in some ways, I prefer to stay here, but I think I'm gonna go there.
Fine. I guess we can't entice him. So that's okay.
So I'll be
Well,
working on a shirt tomorrow because I've got that cut out, and I think I'd like to work on something like that.
well, you just do that. You just do that with your little crony buddies, whatever. Then, also, I usually post that the pop-up sew day runs from 8 till 5. It's going to be a half hour shorter. We'll end at 4:30 because at 5 o'clock I'm going to be on Stephanie's live. She's asked me to come on. I don't know what we're doing, but she's asked me to come on because I think she wants to celebrate the fact that I just went over 10,000 subscribers. Yay! So, speaking of that, I told you that once I hit 10,000 subscribers, I was going to plan to do something special for the occasion. Okay, we have worked it out, Walter and I, what's going to happen. So, on February the 10th, Saturday, February the 10th, we will be having a special 10,000 bash, I call it. It's going to be sort of like a pop-up sew day, but with a couple of differences. So, what's one of the differences? Well, I have no idea how many people will want to attend. You know, I have a limit on Zoom. I can only handle 100 places in Zoom, but I need at least 3 of those places for a couple of my computers and Walter's computer as well. In fact, I'll need 4. So I'm only going to be able to handle 96 spots. Now, I have over 10,000 subscribers. Not that everybody that's subscribed will necessarily want to come to it. Okay? So, yeah. So I'm going to have to do what I do when I run a retreat. You will have to register for it. I'm sorry, but there's no other fair way to do this. If everybody came at once and wanted to get in, it'll crash the system. Well, it won't crash the system, but what'll happen is it'll be too difficult for me to keep track of as I'm letting people in. So you need to pre-register. Registration will not open until February the 1st. I picked February the 1st because it's 10 days before, and which gives you time to register. And also, it's easier to remember, February the 1st. Now, I'll be talking about this in more detail. I'll have a special video that I'm going to put up when we get closer to that date, explaining everything about it. So this is just an overview. Anyways, you will register. Register means you give me your first, your last name, and the email address you wish to be contacted at. I'm going to keep a list. When I get full at 96, I am not going to establish a waiting list like I do on the retreat things. I will probably just send out a short or a little announcement on one of my things that, okay, as of this date, we are now full. However, there's always people who say they're going to come to things and don't show up for whatever reason. So if you don't get on when you register, if you can't register, and I will send you a thing and say, I'm full. Okay, don't worry about it. You'll get a note from me. But on the day of, you could give it a try. I would suggest you wait an hour from the start time. So start time will be at 8. At 9 o'clock, see if you can get in. If I have a spot available, and it'll be on first come, first serve basis as they come up in the waiting list, I'll let you in. Just like that. Now, having said that, that means throughout the day you might be able to get in because some people may not stay for the whole day. It's going to get a little crazy for me on that, and I will do my best to keep everything focused and on track. But if somebody goes and leaves, so if people need to go out during that day for whatever reason.
What about the people that have to come in late on that day? Like the ones that are on the West Coast?
No, they will have pre-registered.
Yeah, okay.
That's for their sake too. Okay, they pre-register for it. So basically, the best thing you can do if you really want to be part of that day is to pre-register as soon as I open up pre-registration, which will be on February the 1st at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Okay. So you just send me an email, first name, last name, then. Do not send it to me before that time because I'll ignore it. Okay. I got to keep it as fair as I possibly can. Okay. Maybe not the best system, but given the fact that I can't afford to pay for unlimited number of connections on Zoom because that would be a small fortune in
Not
money.
only that, it might be pretty crazy on
Well,
here.
yeah. If I had 1,000 people in there, like, oh my God, it's hard enough now to see 96. You know, I'm going through 3 different screens, but yeah. So that's the only fair way that I can do this. All right. Now, what's going to happen during that? Okay, what makes it different from pop-up sew day? Well, if you just want to work on your own project, you may do so. However, before February the 10th, I will have my pattern for When Stars Collide available for you to download. So if you want to work on it while on the 10,000 bash event, feel free to. But I'm not doing it as a sew along. I'm not going to sit down and go, okay, let's all do this. It's a very, very basic and simple pattern. If you can make a half square triangle, you can do this, okay? But if you run into a problem or something, because I've never written a pattern before, and I want to know if something's not clear to you, then you can, during the day, speak to me about that. And I will help you out and do whatever I can. But I'm not going to do it as a sew along. So you have the option. You can work on it during that day or work on something else, whatever you want. Now, the other feature will be, and this is kind of like the retreat, I'm having prizes. The prizes will be Amazon gift certificates. I will be, since I have your names on pre-registration, I will have that all printed out, and I am going to put your names into a random name generator. And throughout the day, I'll be spinning the wheel and handing out a prize at different points. Very much the same as I did with the retreat, the past retreat as well. So that's the best I can do. I know some people are not going to be happy with this because they may not get a chance to become part of this, or whatever. I know I've had some people suggest I give away a couple of my quilts and stuff like that. Well, I can't, because shipping is astronomical. It almost costs me more to ship a quilt to somebody than it did to make it. So I can't do that. That's not a possibility. The easiest thing I can do, also, you can't trust mail services in either Canada or the United States to get whatever you ship to this destination within a timely fashion, if at all. So the easiest thing for me to do is to do electronic gift certificates from Amazon that I can send to you via your email, and you can get whatever you want with that gift certificate. Okay? So that's how it's going to work. As I said, there will be a special video announcement coming up in the next couple of weeks that will go through all of this in a much more organized manner. Okay? So, yeah, that's what's happening. So thank you, everybody who subscribed. And I know some of you just subscribed now, and you've been here for a long time because you either thought you were subscribed or you just never got around to it. And because my numbers jumped in this last week, I've had around 200 new subscribers in less than a week, actually, and it's still growing. And it's almost overwhelming that this is happening, because you have to remember it has taken me 12 years to get 10,000. And so now I think I'm at 10,136. I looked at today. It's been leaping up. And I was told this would happen after you hit 10,000 because somehow the algorithms on YouTube place somebody with over 10,000 subscribers and higher numbers. They sort of push them into the forefront, with recommended videos and things like that. Not really sure how that all works. But anyways, thank you for subscribing, everybody. It gives me the impetus to keep on, for us to keep on developing more content that's worthwhile. We're working on a couple of things right now that we're not going to say too much more about, that take a fair amount of time in order to create them, and we're not even sure how this is going to work, but we are kind of pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone to try and do this because, you're saying that these are the kind of things you want just by giving your support through subscriptions, that kind of thing. So, okay, more to come about the bash later on. But let's get to the main topic. Somebody asked, they want to know how I use my Accuquilt system, my die cutting system, with existing patterns. And what I gather from that question is, if you're thinking about buying an Accuquilt machine, it is a huge investment. It's a lot of money. Is it worth it? Yes, it'll cut your pieces accurately. Yes, it's maybe a little faster. However, it's a big, huge expense. I've got probably $5,000 invested in equipment, the Accuquilt dies and machines and everything. Um, so I thought, all right, I'm going to show you. And I kind of organized this in a little bit more formal way. And I'm going to show you a pattern that I have sitting on my cutting table that I want to do very soon. And this is how, and I'm going to be able to use pretty much all Accuquilt to cut out the pieces for this. So we're going to take a look at that. But before we do, you know that I told you my main machine, it's now called my main machine, my electric machine, is in the shop being fixed. And we talked about that last week on So Chatty. But I did buy a secondary one, which I call now my backup machine. It's manual. It has a crank. So I'm going to insert a little video clip I did here of unboxing that machine right now to start with. Okay, so I have a new Accuquilt machine. And you're probably going to say, but don't you already have the Go electric machine, the Go Big? Yes, I do. But I'm having trouble with it. And we mentioned this back a bit on So Chatty, that there is a problem. It's in the shop, it's being fixed. It's an ongoing problem that I have with that machine. And so if you're interested in that, you can go to So Chatty, that was done on January the 12th, 2024, and hear all about that problem. But in the meantime, I bought another machine that is not electric. It's the next model down in the series of Go machines by Accuquilt, because I can't live without my Accuquilt. I need it. I want it. I have to have it. So this is the machine that I will use when my other machine is in the shop. And it is a manual one, as you can see. Now, I have a lot of money invested in Accuquilt dies. And when I say a lot, I mean thousands, literally thousands of dollars in Accuquilt dies. So that's why this is a necessity for me. So I'm going to do an unboxing right now with this. And there's going to be future videos that probably will show this machine in use as well. But right now we're just going to open it up and get a feel for it. So I just got it today. I'm bringing it home, and I see I need to take some tape off the top of here. Okay, here we go. So when you first open up the box, there is a booklet, and all the Accuquilt machines come with this. It is tells you about the machine. I think there's a little pattern book included in this. Let's just take it out and take a look. Trying to make sure that I'm still in camera when I'm doing all this. Oops. So in that package is this, which basically shows you how this works, how you place the die, your fabric, and the cutting mat, and which way you turn the handle, and away you go. So it is a very simple thing to do. This detailed booklet that again shows you the same stuff, operating instructions, and then some hints on how to get perfect cuts. And yeah, it shows you how many layers of fabric or other products you can put into it, like leather or denim or flannel, that the machine can handle. And then it talks about their dies and things. So just basically general information. Then there's a registration card for warranty purposes, and 1 year. It has a 1-year warranty on it. Okay, I've done that all before. Then we have this mix and match quilt blocks, 13 blocks, and sampler patterns using your Go value die. Now, this comes with a die, and I'll pull it out in a minute, which they call the value die. So we'll see what's involved with that. And it shows you different patterns and how to make them, which is a nice resource to have too. All right, so that's paperwork. So styrofoam, actually very nice styrofoam, very spongy. And the Accuquilt is in a bag. So it comes with a protective bag. Let's pull that out here. And let's pull out, here's the die. They call it the value die. 2-inch and 4-inch finished shapes. Okay, so, and it shows you some of the things you can make with that. Oops, sorry about the glare. And there's another, oh, it's a cutting mat. You definitely have to have a cutting mat. Okay, no surprises here because I know how to use an Accuquilt machine. Okay, so this is the little bag. It's kind of a canvasy material to protect your machine. I'll tell you right now, I'll just put this bag to the side. It'd be great if you're going to take this along with you to, say, a retreat or a class, which actually, if I was ever thinking of taking my Accuquilt machine to a class, this would be the one I would take because it's lighter and it folds up very nicely as compared to the electric machine. So here's what it looks like, nice and shiny. And let's turn it around. And here's the handle. Okay, so how do we open this up? Well, it's magnetic. And it just folds down like that. Let me bring you down a bit so you can see this. As best I can get into this shot here, but there you go. Let's see. So lots of work surface. Here's your plate, and this goes like that. So let's get out the value die. Oh, and there's something else it came with taped on the back. This is a pick. This pick is for digging out little bits that get caught sometimes in your die itself. I have one of these already, but it's good to have another one. This block and that all came as part of the package with this. It's sort of a starter kit. Sorry, I'm not in the shot. Just taking this apart. Here's the die. The dies always come with a tip sheet, and you can go onto the website and you can download patterns that use this particular die. So what is on this particular die? They call it a value die. Okay, and it looks like it has it's either 2 or 2.5 inch. I think it's a 2-inch. Yeah, 2-inch square, a 4-inch square, and probably a 2-inch half square triangle. I'm just looking to see if it tells me this. Must tell me somewhere. Doesn't seem to be saying so on the package, but easy enough to figure out. Let me get a ruler. Yeah, that's a 2.5 inch half square triangle, which would finish at 2 inches. Okay, so those three are all on this die. I do not own this die. I do have one so that will cut all of these shapes, but you know, kind of good when you have these all to coordinate together on one die. So let us see. So I'm going to put this down on the machine. I'm just going to slide this a little bit over this way so you can see this better. Okay. I need a piece of fabric. Let's see, do I have a scrap piece of fabric somewhere handy that I can throw on here? Do I have a piece of fabric? Yeah, wait, oh, let's grab a fat quarter. I have millions of those. Pick one that I don't like. That's kind of ugly. Oh, here's an ugly. Okay. So, this is a fat quarter. This will actually cover all of the ones, but I need to press it. Give me a sec. I'm just going over to my ironing station, my pressing station. Giving this a quick press. And actually, I'm going to fold this in half because this will cut up to 6 layers of fabric. And so I'll just cut, I'm not going to get this big block here, only get part of it, but that's okay. This is just a demo, just to make sure it's cutting. I'm going to use my cutting mat. This is a 6x12. It just lays right on here. And then you slide this in and start cranking away. And yeah, so let's get rid of that. That's scrap. So here we go. I got two 2-inch squares, and I got 4 little triangles. And you see, with the Accuquilt dies, one thing I like about when you're making half square triangles is that it has these dog ears are cut off, and that's also how you line them up. So you put them right sides together, and all you have to do is just line up those little squared off edges. I'm not doing this very well because I'm trying to do it in mid-air, which is not a good thing. Let's see if I put it down here. Maybe you can see it. Yeah. So I would just line it up here. I'm not doing a very good job of it, but I would. And then you just stitch 1/4-inch seam from point to point down here along that, and you open it up, and you don't have to trim it. It's already the perfect size. As I said, this finishes at 2.5 or 2 inches, half square triangle. So that's all there is to this machine. But the advantage of this machine over my main machine is I don't have to worry about plugging it in. It's a little bit more portable as such, and hopefully I will avoid that. Not hopefully, I know I will, because it doesn't plug in. My problem is where it plugs in on the other machine. Okay, I don't think that made a heck of a lot of sense, but you know what I'm talking about. And it all folds right up for easy storage. Now, what could they have improved on this machine? It'd be nice if this had folded up and into the machine, so this isn't hanging out, but can't have everything, right? So yeah, so this is a good alternative to the electric machine, but if you have arthritis in your hands, this may not be something that you may want, because yeah, you have a crank. That's where the electric one is superior. Okay, so I thought you'd like to see my new addition to my Accuquilt family. Okay, so now you know what the equipment looks like. Let's talk about how you use it with a pattern. Okay, this pattern is an Art East pattern, and you're probably more familiar with Art East patterns that have cute cats and dogs and characters from the Wizard of Oz and things like that in them. This one is a more traditional paper-pieced pattern. It caught my eye. It's a relatively new one from Art East.
It's
And
paper pieced?
no, this is not paper
You
pieced.
just said it's a paper pieced item.
Okay, I lied. I didn't mean paper pieced. I meant patch. It's patchwork. It's traditional quilting. Patches, pieces, whatever. It's not paper piecing, okay? It's traditional. So, this one is a good one for using an Accuquilt with, because there's a lot of the same pieces, and so you've got a lot of repetitive cutting involved with this, which can be somewhat tedious and discouraging when you're working on a quilt, because you seem like you're cutting forever. So let's take a look at how I would do this. Okay, this comes from the pattern itself, and there are different sizes. I think I just grabbed the baby size, but it doesn't matter because they're all the same shapes or sizes. It's just the number that varies to make a bigger quilt. So you can see that in this pattern, they have all the fabrics listed. Those are like at the top, fabric 1, fabric 2, fabric 3, and fabric 4, and then the border pieces. And then within those fabrics, there are subunits of fabric, and they are labeled with a letter in the alphabet. Pretty much standard, the way all patterns work. And then it tells you in the next column how many of those pieces you need and what size those pieces are. So you see under fabric 1, piece A, you need 64 pieces that are 2.5 by 2.5 inches. So it's a square. And B piece is another square, but 1.5 inches square. And C is a rectangle, 36 pieces, 2.5 by 1.5, etc. The way it goes through the pattern. So yeah, if I was doing this using my rulers and my rotary cutter to cut them, I would probably be cutting strips of fabric here that are, 2.5 inches wide for the first one, and then I'd be subcutting it into 2.5 inch squares. And the same with B. And then C, I would do a 2.5 inch strip and then cut them at 1.5, subcut them to 1.5. Okay, not a hard thing to do, but very repetitive. And a lot of cutting. So this is where your Accuquilt works really well for this kind of thing. So first of all, I need to make a list of which dies I own for all of this. Let me blow this up a little bit more. So I would normally just do this on a piece of, sticky note paper or something like that. But for the sake of my demonstration here, I did it more formally. I put it in my word processor. So I went through the pattern, and these are all the pieces that I need. Now, I did not put down how many I need of each of these. I would go back to the pattern for that. But I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. So I need some 2.5 by 2.5 inch squares. I went into a little book that I have. It's a binder. This comes from, you can download this from the Accuquilt site. It's a PDF. It lists all the various shapes and sizes that your Accuquilt dies can cut. There are pages of them. There's circles, rectangles, triangles, squares, parallelograms, trapezoids, strips, all kinds of things. And they organize them by the shape, and it's organized in alphabetical order. And like this one says circles, it's the first page in this set. And then it shows you the size, this description. That's the finished size. But you know that when you're cutting pieces in a traditional pattern, you are given the unfinished size. Well, Accuquilt does that for you. It says actual die cut or hand cut size. So that means if I need, my pattern says I need a 2.5 inch square, I would look in my chart for the squares, and I'd look for, in this column, actual die cut 2.5 inch. Okay, so if I go back to that little note I was showing you, all Accuquilt dies have a number, and this is the number. So I look for die number 55709, and that will cut me 2.5 inch squares. I look for 55232, that'll cut 1.5 inch squares, etc., all the way down. Now these ones at the bottom are strips, so they're really long dies. So in the case of this, it says I need strips that are 34.5 inches by 2.5 inches. So I would get out my 2.5 strip die, and I would cut with the fabric with that, and then just subcut it to 34.5. The same with the one that's 38.5, and the same with the 4.5 strip, which I would subcut to 11.5 inches. Now, I put a note here for myself. I own all of these dies. I do not own a 4.5 inch strip die yet, but that's on my list of dies that I want to buy. In the case of that, well, then I would just do it the way I would normally, traditionally cut a strip. No big deal. One strip, I think I could handle that without the die. But it does make me aware of what I don't have. Now, these are numbers, but a lot of these dies that I have come in things called a cube. And let me show you. So here, I pulled out all my boxes, and you'll notice these three here say Go Cube. And these have 4 different dies in them, and they all have different sizes, and they're nicely packed up and arranged in these boxes for storing them in as well. So usually it'll tell me in that little chart, you will find the die you need in the 4-inch mix and match box of the Go Cube. So I go to it, and on the inside of this, I don't have a picture of it, but there's a little holder that each of the die sits in, and it has the number of the die, and it tells you what it makes, what size it is. If it's a square, rectangle, what size that size or rectangle is. It's a very efficient system for storing them and keeping them organized. So I use that little chart that I created. I go to these boxes and I'll pull up these dies. And here are all the dies with the exception of the 4.5-inch one, which I don't own, that will cut all the pieces I need for this quilt. And so all it is now is a matter of me putting my fabric, my fabric A, put them on the blocks that cut 2.5-inch squares, and away I go. Now, some of these blocks you see cut multiples of the same size. Like this is a 3.5-inch square. It cuts 3 of them. This one is the 1.5. It cuts 4. This is one of the rectangles. It cuts 4 at a time. This cuts 4 at a time. That's a bigger one, so it cuts only 1 at a time. So you see, if you need 64 of this size down here, well, 4 goes into 64. How many times? 21?
16.
No, wait. No.
16?
16. Yeah. It helps if you have a calculator too. 16 times. So I only need to run my fabric through this 16 times. No, wait. No, I don't. That's if it's a single layer. An Accuquilt machine will cut up to 6 layers of fabric at a time. So 6 layers of fabric times 4 is 24 of this size of squares I can get with one pass through the die. If I need 64, I only need to do that 3 times. So you can see the speed here it's happening at. So in no time, I have all of my pieces cut, and then I can get on with the sewing. So that is one of the advantages of an Accuquilt. I guess all the pictures I have there of using it, and it's that easy. Yes, there's a little bit of time spent with your pattern isolating what sizes of cuts you need, but most patterns, if they're written really well, they have that right on the first page, and they have already organized it for you. So you could write right on the pattern the numbers of the dies, know what your dies are. Now, I'm lucky. As I said, I've invested a lot of money in Accuquilt, and so has Walter, because a lot of those dies were gifts that he bought me. Those cube boxes, if you remember back 2 Christmases ago, when I revealed all of that. So yeah, I'm in really good shape when it comes to the dies. But you're going to say, yeah, well, I'd like an Accuquilt, or I have an Accuquilt, but I only have a couple of dies, so how's this going to work for me? Well, you've got to make a determination whether or not the Accuquilt system you're willing to invest in it. But if you are, here's my suggestion. Look at the patterns you've already done and figure out what the sizes of the majority of the blocks that you make. Are they 12-inch? Are they 10-inch? Are they 8-inch? And then I would suggest you spend the money and invest in one or two of the cube sets. They're expensive, but there's a lot of versatility with them, but they come by size. So if you're used to making an 8-inch block, then you might want to invest in the 8-inch cube. If most of your blocks are 10 inches, you might want to invest in that. So yeah, you've got to know what you're doing with that kind of thing. But that's a good way to get started. A lot of people think Accuquilt is meant for applique only, and because they do have a lot of what I call one-offs. Okay, one-offs are blocks that cut out shapes that you can applique. Like at Christmas time, you can get like a Santa Claus or a snowman or things like that.
Did you show those down here on the?
I showed those up here.
Okay.
Yes. Why are you looking at it? Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Thank you for the interruption. Yeah, everybody saw it. I was there. I looked. I made sure. Okay. Enough about that. So yeah. However, there's also something called BOBs, blocks on board, which is one die. It's usually a fairly long die. It's kind of, a lot of them are about the length of those strip dies that I just showed you up here, those long ones. And they will have all of the pieces for one block on those. They're kind of economical. Also, you can buy dies that are meant to cut out all the pieces for a particular block as well. They're like a block on board, but there's a slight difference. The block on boards are more usually more intricate kinds of things. Like they're more kind of halfway between cutting your shapes for traditional paper or traditional quilting. I was going to say paper piecing. Get that out of my mind. See how paper piecing has screwed up my brain. Darn you, Shannon. Um, but you can get blocks for making, like if you want to do a double wedding ring, there's a block for that. If you want to do a carpenter's wheel, there's a block for that. Mariner's compass, there's a block for that as well. So yeah, if you're into those kind of quilts. So the advantage of those are you don't have to cut manually all the little pieces that you need to create like one block in a mariner's compass. It's all on one block. It cuts it all for you. Everything will fit together perfectly with it. Which is another thing. If you hate doing half square triangles the traditional way, drawing the line and that, or whatever method you use, it's good to invest in the half square triangle or even the flying geese blocks or dies, because there's no trimming. Your two pieces, they cut them out, you lay them against each other. They've cut the dog ears off already for you, the whole bit. So you can eliminate a couple of steps in the process with that. It's very fast. I especially like it for flying geese, because you know how tedious flying geese can be if you do it in one of the millions of different ways you can do it, but using, your rotary cutter and a ruler and all that kind of thing. So what are the advantages to using the Accuquilt with a pattern you're working on? Well, I've already mentioned some of them. Speed, of course. Accuracy. It does save you time, not just in cutting out pieces, but also when it comes to piecing, like things like half square triangles and flying geese as well, because you don't have that extra step. A lot of people like to make their half square triangles and flying geese oversize and then trim them down to the size that they need. And there are specialty rulers that help you with that as well. But you don't need that if you have the die or dies, because they do come in different sizes for whatever, depending on how big you want your half square triangle or your flying goose. So yeah, there's a lot of advantage to that. Disadvantages, biggest disadvantage is the cost, more than anything else. Expensive. The electric machine costs me over 800 Canadian dollars. The crank machine cost me almost $500. So right there. Dies usually range in price from $65, $70. I'm talking Canadian again, upwards. With a lot of them over $100 a pop.
Now you can sometimes buy at your dealer dies and that have gone on sale. They have regular sales.
Yeah.
And they're a little cheaper when you buy them on sale, but they're still expensive.
They're still expensive. And where to get them? Well, we're lucky. We have a quilt store that's only about 30 minutes, 35 minutes away from us, that is an authorized dealer for Accuquilt stuff. And they have a extensive list. Well, it's Kawartha Quilting. You've heard me talk about them. You can go to their website and order from them. If you're Canadian, if you live, especially if you live in Ontario, you can order from them. They'll ship them to you. I'm not sure what the shipping costs. They are a heavy item. But usually their shipping's pretty reasonable on most things. Or you can go and pick them up at the store too. So yeah. If you live in the States, I think Accuquilt is, now I thought they were located down in Texas, but
no,
they're not. They're a northern state.
Yeah,
aren't
they're in not Nevada. They're
Minnesota?
no.
Missouri?
Nebraska, I think.
Nebraska. Oh, okay.
Oklahoma? No. Omaha.
Omaha. Oh.
Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, okay. So, And they often have deals in the America for the Americans that we don't get as Canadians.
Yeah, and they will ship for depending on what you buy. Can't remember what the limit is, but there's a if you buy a certain amount of money's worth, they will ship to you free in the US. So you might want to look into that. And they often have sales on like Black Friday or on other days that give you a decent discount. So you might look into that, especially if you're American. If you're Canadian and you're
Right.
looking at having them, they will ship to Canada, but they're very expensive to ship to Canada.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, whatever you're saving on the dye is completely wiped out by the cost of the shipping.
Yeah. And of course you have to figure in the exchange rate as well. So, yeah. So, yes, it is an investment. Overall, oh, and the other advantage to an Accuquilt machine, if you buy an electric one, is for people who suffer from, they have problems with their hands. If you have arthritis or something like that, uh, it's a much easier on your hands for it. The other disadvantage is you got to have a place to store it because it does take up a lot of space. Now, the one I just bought with the crank folds up really nice. It's relatively light, and it's sitting in the place that my electric one usually sits. And I'm lucky I've got a spot right by my cutting bench that I just pull it up, put it on, away I go. And then I can put it away, and it's not a big rigmarole. If you don't have that kind of thing, or you don't have a convenient place for it, that might be a disadvantage to getting it out. And I have to admit, I use my Accuquilt a lot. However, there have been a few times when I've looked, I've only needed a couple of strips of fabric or something. I don't get out the Accuquilt. I get out my stripology ruler and I do it with that. But when you're doing a big pattern and you're trying to get everything organized and cut, then what I showed you, the method I use, uh, that's where it really pays off to have an Accuquilt machine. We are not sponsored by Accuquilt, by the way. Their customer service sucks majorly as well. I am so lucky and so fortunate that I have Kawartha Quilting because Kawartha Quilting looks after me very, very well. So I don't have any worries that way. Okay, so yeah, I hope that answered the person's question that asked me, how do I use the Accuquilt with a regular quilting pattern? Well, now you know. Oh, and for those of you that are like to do applique as well, but you have an embroidery machine, Accuquilt for many of their dies have an embroidery file that you will work with most. Like they'll have the one that'll work with your particular embroidery machine, and so you can use the die to cut out the applique shapes and then place it on your embroidery machine and have the embroidery machine actually sew the appliques down. Now, I have experimented with that once, and actually I don't like it. Maybe I'll make a video one day showing you why, but I have another method that works, I think, better for that, but still using their freebie because those files are free, the embroidery files. So that's something you might want to check if you already own an Accuquilt and you've got some shapes, applique shapes. You might want to go on to their site and see if they have an embroidery file, if you have an embroidery machine to go with it. So, yeah, they are thinking about things. It's just too bad about their customer service. That's the biggest problem with them. Okay. Well, if you have any other questions about Accuquilt, you can put them in the comment section below. Overall, I do not regret spending the money I spent on this machine and on my dies and everything like that, and I intend to buy more dies. I am the die king. I'm to die for. Yeah. Okay, I guess that's it. So, pop-up sew day tomorrow, January the 20th, 2024. Doors open at 8 a.m. Eastern. Hope to see many of you there, and stay tuned for more information about the 10,000 bash. And we'll see you later. Say goodbye, Walter.
Goodbye.